Welcome to a century of cinema. Today I will be exploring my favourite movies of 1931. First up is Monkey Business. This is my favourite Marx Brothers movie. Like Animal Crackers before it, they do not get too hung up on plot or on side characters, yet the moments when they do are a vast improvement over their previous efforts. They even give Zeppo something substantial to do, making him the romantic lead. There is a standard formula to Marx Brothers movies. Have some kind of story, plug the brothers into it in some way, and spend the majority of the time letting Groucho, Chico, and Harpo do their stuff. Where this differs from most of the other movies is that all the Marx Brothers characters know each other from the beginning of the film. After this point, Chico and Harpo usually turn up together, but Groucho generally makes his own entrance. In Monkey Business, they all stow away together on a cruise and get embroiled in an organised crime power struggle. Chico does his impeccable routines and masterfully plays the piano with his signature style. Harpo is manic, deranged and hilarious, calming down only when he plays the harp, which he does very seriously. And of course, Groucho is a bottomless well of great lines and snappy comebacks. Monkey Business is a riot and worth seeing just to watch the brothers impersonate Maurice Chevalier to get off the boat.
Hey, are you going to identify yourself or else? If a nightingale would sing like you, they sing much sweeter than they do. You brought a new kind of love to me.
Night Nurse was directed by William Wellman and stars Barbara Stanwyck in an early, compelling performance. Stanwyck plays Laura Hart, who becomes a trainee nurse. This is the focus of roughly the first half of the film. While training, she meets another trainee named Maloney, played with a lot of wit and charm by Joan Blondell, and starts falling for a roguish bootlegger played by Ben Lyon. After her training is complete, she takes a job as a night nurse for a pair of sick little girls, with no father and a drunk mother who seems to be controlled by her chauffeur Nick, played by a young Clark Gable. Laura must find a way to help the children despite the interference of Nick and a complicit doctor. One of the interesting things about this film is the tonal shift when we go from the first half, during Laura's training, and the second intensely dramatic half, where the stakes are raised heavily, and Stanwyck transitions beautifully. On top of Barbara Stanwyck's star turn as Laura, the supporting cast do a fine job doing just that, supporting. Joan Blondell is a kind of light throughout, jaded and world-weary, but vivacious and fun. And Clark Gable, in a role originally meant for James Cagney, who got suddenly famous earlier that year, starring in The Public Enemy, is incredibly intimidating and menacing as Nick, the clear antagonist of the film. However, this is Barbara Stanwyck's movie. She is tough and funny and tender and dismayed and completely on point in every frame. That's why Barbara Stanwyck in Night Nurse is my choice for the Best Actress of 1931. Dracula, directed by Todd Browning, is probably the first movie of the 1930s that I loved or actually even saw, though I was already a huge fan of the novel and knew of the film's existence and who Bela Lugosi was. This film is not based on Bram Stoker's novel as such. It is largely adapted from Hamilton Dean and John L. Balderston's stage play, which omits much of the plot and several characters, essentially focusing on Dracula, Van Helsing, Mina, and Renfield, who is essentially a Renfield-Harker amalgamation, reducing Harker to just Mina's fiancé. Browning's version captures a beautifully gothic atmosphere with stunning sets, especially Dracula's castle and Carfax Abbey, his London residence. Both contain grand staircases allowing Lugosi's Dracula to loom over certain scenes. Lugosi's performance is very slow and deliberate, yet exotic and menacing. It is actually nothing short of iconic, his look and voice becoming the template for all vampires for decades to come.
Listen to them, children of the night. What music they make.
City Lights is my favourite Charlie Chaplin movie, and very close to being my favourite movie of 1931. In fact, just prior to this video, I was still debating with myself whether or not it is. Regardless, I adore it. It contains some of his best comedy and is by far his most romantic movie. Chaplin's tramp meets a blind girl selling flowers on the street and is immediately taken with her. Hearing a fancy car depart after their interaction, she mistakes the tramp for a rich man, which he does not correct her about. He quietly observes her for some time more, his appreciation for her increasing. Later, trying to find a place to sleep, he comes across a man trying to kill himself. After thwarting the suicide attempt, we find out that the man is a millionaire. Naturally grateful to the tramp, the millionaire takes him under his wing. Unfortunately, he only remembers the tramp when he's drunk, which causes problems when the tramp tries to help the girl pay her rent and get her to a doctor that could restore her eyesight. The tramp does whatever he can to raise the money on his own, even participating in a boxing match, to no avail. Fortunately, he finds his drunk millionaire friend and asks him to help, and he agrees. However, at this point, some crooks knock out the millionaire, and the tramp is blamed for assault and theft. He escapes long enough to give the money to the girl, but is imprisoned soon after. The scene when the tramp and the girl are reunited is one of my favorites in all of film history. This is why Chaplin was the master of silent movies, and Virginia Cherrill as the blind girl is actually incredible in every scene she appears in. While I have not given any of my 1931 superlatives to City Lights, it is, however, very close to taking out all the categories. Fritz Lang's M is a truly remarkable piece of work, which holds up better than most films of its time. A child murderer is stalking the city streets and the police have no leads. They resort to cracking down on the criminal element, performing nightly raids and taking all known or suspected criminals in for questioning. This does not sit well with the organised crime leaders, who decide to take matters into their own hands, using a network of beggars who, because they go largely unnoticed, will be able to find and follow the killer more effectively. The police find out who the killer is at around the same time the beggars and criminals find the killer himself. Making sure they don't lose him, they surreptitiously mark his coat with a chalk M. The criminals catch the killer and give him a kind of trial. Peter Lorre plays Hans Beckett, the child murderer who compulsively whistles Griegs in the Hall of the Mountain King, which eventually leads to his capture. Lorre is incredible in his breakout role, particularly in the trial scene, where he pleads for his life, explaining that he simply can't help himself. Yet he is also appropriately creepy and disturbing when he stalks his prey. To this day, I believe it to be his best work, which is something I would also say about Fritz Lang's direction and his screenplay with his wife and frequent collaborator Thea von Harbour. Lang highlights pre-lap dialogue, that is dialogue from a scene beginning at the end of the previous one, which is commonly used today and enhances pacing. And the screenplay is taut, tense, and ahead of its time in many ways. Exploring the dangers of paranoia and mass hysteria, showing serial murder as a compulsion and illness, and wondering what justice actually is. Not answering questions, but merely asking them. The only message the film blatantly offers is a plea to watch over your children. M is my choice for Best Actor for Peter Lorre, Best Director for Fritz Lang, Best Screenplay for Lang and Thea von Harbour, and Best Picture of 1931. Join me next time on A Century of Cinema when I will be exploring my favourite films of 1932. Now, go watch a movie.